I never thought the safest place in my world would become the stage for its biggest betrayal. My name is Camille Foster. I'm 33, and last year, I sold my cybersecurity startup for $25 million. I worked 10 years for that moment. No family connections, no investors, just sleepless nights, coding through migraines, and building trust in a world obsessed with shortcuts. I once pitched CyberNexus to a room full of investors with 2 hours of sleep, a nosebleed, and coffee spilled down my blouse. They laughed me out of the room. I built it anyway. The plan was simple. Use $10 million in cash to secure a legacy property back in my hometown of Toledo, Ohio. A place that meant something. Where my mother raised me and my brother Dylan with nothing but coupons, frozen dinners, and grit. That house? It was more than real estate. I wanted to buy it, restore it, and turn it into a free learning center for underprivileged kids who reminded me of, well, me. The bank manager raised his eyebrows when I asked to withdraw the money in cash. Even my lawyer warned me, it's not the smartest move, Camille. But I had my reasons. Personal ones. Legal ones. And frankly, emotional ones. Clarice called me that night. It's highly unusual, Camille. Are you sure the bank even allows it? I told her yes. I'd cleared it with the regional director. Signed everything twice, and scheduled the transfer under surveillance. But the real reason? I wanted to feel it. The weight. The consequence. Something tangible. Because for once, this wasn't about logic. It was about legacy. I arranged private security. I rented an armored vehicle. And I brought those duffel bags full of clean, traceable $100 bills straight to my mother's house. She made me loaf that night. Dylan was unusually quiet, his eyes bouncing between me and the hallway, like something was tugging at his attention. Mom just smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I should have known. I really should have known. At 7:12 the next morning, I opened the safe to an empty vault and a handwritten note that read, "We deserve better. You owe us this much. Don't look for us." If you've ever felt your chest collapse in slow motion, like your heart just stepped off a ledge, you know exactly how that moment felt. But if you think that's the worst part of this story, oh, just wait. I didn't scream. Not at first. I just stood there, staring at the open safe like maybe, just maybe, if I blinked hard enough, the bags would reappear. That the whole thing was a trick of the light. A cruel dream I hadn't yet shaken. But the emptiness didn't budge, and neither did the note. It was written on a piece of stationery I recognized, Mom's favorite set, with the gold-trimmed edges and the tiny lavender flowers. In 6th grade, I failed a math quiz and cried into the couch cushion. She sat beside me and said, "Failing just means your next success will feel bigger." I believed her. I needed to. The same one she used to write me letters when I was away at college, back when I still believed she was proud of me. Now it just held 12 words that hollowed me out from the inside. I picked up the note, my hand trembling. "We deserve better. You owe us this much. Don't look for us." My knees gave out. I slid down the wall like the oxygen had been vacuumed from the room. My phone was charging on the nightstand, and I don't even remember crossing the hallway to get it. I just remember calling Dylan first. Straight to voicemail. Again. Then Mom. Disconnected. I called Jaden, the head of the private security firm that helped transport the cash, but I stopped myself before hitting dial. What was I even going to say? That I handed $10 million to my mother and brother because I thought I could trust them? I thought about calling the bank manager, the one who tried to warn me. I thought about calling Clarice, my former CFO, the one person who would have told me not to do this if I hadn't shut her out of the process. But the person I called was Jordan, my ex. He picked up after 2 rings, his voice groggy. "Camille, is everything okay? We hadn't spoken in months. The last time we did," he told me, "I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I didn't know how to be enough for you." And I never answered that. He only lived 7 blocks away. No, my voice cracked. They're gone. The money. My mom. Dylan. They took everything. There was a beat of silence. Then, "Stay where you are. I'm coming." It wasn't until he arrived, 23 minutes later, still in flannel pajama pants and no shoes, that I realized I'd stopped breathing properly. He found me in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles were white. He didn't ask questions at first, just wrapped his arms around me while I shook so hard my teeth clattered. And I kept saying it, over and over again. "I don't understand. I don't understand. I don't understand." He gently pried the note from my hand and read it in silence, then folded it carefully like it was evidence. "We're going to call the police," he said. "Right now." That afternoon blurred. 2 patrol officers arrived first, followed by a detective, Amanda Silva, mid-40s, steady eyes, notepad in hand. She listened without interrupting. But I saw her brow lift when I explained that yes, I had voluntarily brought $10 million in cash to my mother's house. And yes, I had put it in her safe. And no, we didn't have a signed agreement. Because she was my mother. When I showed her the withdrawal receipts, the photos of the sealed duffel bags, the emails with the bank, her tone shifted. From neutral to measured. "Camille," she said after a long pause, "we're going to take this seriously. But you should be aware family theft cases can get complicated. If your mother claims it was a gift." "It wasn't," I snapped. "It was a down payment. I was buying a property. I just needed it safe for one night." Detective Silva nodded. "Then let's prove that." She left with the note, the receipts, and a list of known contacts. But even after the door shut, the silence in that house screamed louder than anything. Jordan stayed with me through the evening. We ordered Chinese food and didn't touch it. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dylan's face, the way he looked at me that night, almost nervous. And Mom's odd cheerfulness. The way she touched my arm and said, "You've done well for yourself, baby girl." Was it admiration? Or a final goodbye? By midnight, I opened my laptop and started digging. Travel sites, airline bookings, private charter services out of Ohio. I knew they had cash, but where would they go? Who would help them? Did Mom still talk to that old friend in Florida, the one who vanished after a fraud investigation? Around 2 a.m., I refreshed my email and froze. There it was, an image attachment, sent from an anonymous account. My mother and Dylan, boarding a private jet, sunglasses on, matching smug smiles. The caption read, "Don't worry, you'll bounce back. You always do." It wasn't the theft that gutted me. It was the cruelty, the mockery in their tone, the way they looked so proud of themselves, like this was some kind of victory. I closed the laptop slowly, heart pounding. I wasn't crying anymore. I was done crying. If they thought they'd won, they hadn't even begun to understand who they'd stolen from. 3 days passed. 3 days of waking up in cold sweat, half expecting to hear my mother's voice in the kitchen like none of this ever happened. Detective Silva had been diligent. She looped me in every afternoon with a status update, but they all sounded the same. No border activity under their names. No credit card usage since the night of the theft. No trace of the jet's destination. I was chasing ghosts. On the 4th night, I was in my living room, scrolling through travel records I had no real authority to access. Eyes burning from lack of sleep when my phone buzzed. It was Jaden, the head of the private security team I'd hired for the transfer. "Camille," he said, his voice clipped. "I need to speak with you. Now. In person." I blinked. "Is something wrong?" "It's about the money. I can't say more over the phone. I'll be at your place in 20 minutes. 21 minutes later. He was standing in my living room, dressed in black tactical pants and a gray quarter-zip jacket, laptop bag slung across his shoulder. He didn't even sit. Instead, he placed the laptop on my dining table and opened a live GPS tracking interface. "Before I show you this," he said, "you should know. This was your idea." I stared at him. "Excuse me?" 3 days before the withdrawal, he continued, "you contacted my office directly. You requested that the real cash be secured in our offsite vault. And we replaced the transport bags with polymer-based counterfeits, visually indistinguishable unless scanned." I opened my mouth to protest, but he pulled up a signed order form. My name, my signature. The memory came back in pieces. The bank, the stress, the flurry of papers. The moment when I asked the branch manager if they'd had any theft issues in the past. He'd mentioned a partnership with Jaden's firm for high-risk clients. Then a quiet aside from Jaden himself in a conference room. "If you have doubts, we can set up a safety measure." I must have nodded. I must have signed. I didn't know what to believe anymore, I murmured. I guess I didn't think I'd really need it. Jaden nodded once, then tapped the screen. 3 red blinking dots appeared on a map of southern France. "Nice. Monaco. St. Jean Cap Ferrat," he said. "That's where the bags have been. They're still transmitting. Embedded RFID trackers inside the fake bills." I leaned in. The interface showed detailed movement. Hotel names, boutiques, Car rentals. Restaurants. They're spending the fakes, I said slowly. And no one's flagged them? Cash-heavy places. Tourist areas. Street-level transactions, he explained. They probably haven't deposited anything into a bank yet. I ran my hands through my hair. So the real money? Still locked down in our vault. Temperature controlled. Monitored 24/7. Something shifted in me then. Like a switch. Like breath after drowning. They thought they stole $10 million. I whispered. They didn't even get 10 cents. Jaden offered a rare smile. Looks that way. We sat in silence for a long moment. Then I asked, can you send me everything? Every ping? Every location? He nodded. Absolutely. What are you thinking? I didn't answer right away. Because I wasn't just thinking. I was planning. I wasn't plotting revenge. I was writing code again. Except this time, it wasn't for a system. It was for justice. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I couldn't. Because I didn't want to. For the first time in a week, I felt powerful again. Not angry. Not betrayed. Just focused. I pulled out my notebook, the one I used to build Cybernexus from scratch, and began mapping things out like I was building a system. I reached out to Priya Shah, my longtime legal counsel. To Clarice, my former CFO and closest friend. And to Marcus Holloway, a retired intelligence officer who owed me a favor. They all said yes. By sunrise, I had a team. I sent Jaden a message with 4 words. We go to Europe. 2 days later, I sat in the first-class lounge at JFK International Airport with Clarice across from me. Reviewing dossiers on a secure tablet, the counterfeit bills were still transmitting from a luxury resort in Monaco. The reservation was under Catherine and Alex Bradford. Mom and Dylan had new hair, new clothes, new everything, but not enough brains to leave the tracking devices behind. Clarice took a sip of her espresso. What's the plan once we're there? I looked out the window as a plane taxied down the runway. We watch, I said. We document. And then we let them think they've won, until the moment they realize they never had a chance. She raised an eyebrow. Revenge. I shook my head. Clarity. And that was the difference. I didn't want to punish them. I wanted them to understand what they'd never grasped. That the woman they tried to steal from had built her entire life anticipating threats like them. And this time, they walked right into the kind of system I used to sell for 8 figures. Monaco was dazzling in a way that felt obscene. Marble sidewalks. Yachts the size of office buildings. Perfume in the air so thick it made your head spin. It was the kind of place you only went if you already believed you'd made it. And apparently my mother and Dylan did. Jaden booked us a private surveillance suite at Hotel Les Jardins, 3 blocks from where Catherine and Alex Bradford were staying. The tracker data showed they hadn't moved far in days. Same hotel, same luxury boutiques, same routine. They were getting comfortable. Each morning, they had breakfast on the rooftop terrace. Each afternoon, they shopped or lounged at the spa. And every night, like clockwork, they dined somewhere where you needed a dress code and a 3-day reservation. Clarice watched them through high-zoom optics from our balcony. Marcus traced their purchases through access to local merchant logs. And I waited. Not for the right time to strike. For the right time to look them in the eye. For days into surveillance. I spotted my mother up close. She was in the hotel's atrium, walking past a floral installation with a Louis Vuitton tote swinging from her elbow. A little boy ran past her with a balloon, nearly bumping into her heels. His dad grabbed his hand, laughing. I stared at them, not because of the child, but because it reminded me that family isn't who shares your blood. It's who guards your peace. Her silver gray hair was gone, dyed copper red. Her posture straighter. Her gait looser. She looked lighter. I stood 10 feet away, behind a column, watching. And she laughed. Not a fake laugh. Not a nervous one. But a real, unbothered laugh. I should have felt rage. But instead, I felt clarity. This wasn't some desperate act. This wasn't a cry for help. She was enjoying it. That night, we pulled the trigger. Marcus confirmed they had a dinner reservation at Le Blanc Seal, a Michelin-starred restaurant by the harbor. Private corner table. Champagne pre-ordered. We chose not to alert the authorities yet. Not because we couldn't, but because I needed this confrontation. I needed them to see me, not as the daughter or the sister, but as the woman they underestimated one last time. I wore a black tailored dress, minimalist jewelry, and no expression. At 8:17 p.m., I stepped inside the restaurant. Passing the maitre d' without a word. I saw them immediately. Dylan in a linen suit he never could have afforded. Mom in a green silk wrap dress, sipping from a crystal flute. They were leaning in, whispering, smiling. I stopped 3 feet from their table. Neither of them looked up at first. So I said quietly, "Room for one more?" Dylan dropped his fork. My mother froze mid-sip. "Camille." She said it like a ghost name, like a dream she tried to erase. I pulled out the empty chair and sat. No yelling, no dramatics. Just the sound of crystal clinking and a violinist in the background. "Relax," I said. "I'm not here to make a scene." My mother stared. "How did you find you?" I glanced at the Hermes clutch on the table. "You've been carrying the same bag that's been pinging GPS signals from 3 countries for the last 10 days. Next time, maybe leave the counterfeit money at home." Dylan's face turned the color of bone. "You're bluffing," he muttered. I smiled gently. "Am I?" I reached into my clutch and laid down a small metal scanner. Clicked it. The table lit up red. "Your money's fake," I said softly. "Your names are fake. Your freedom, also fake. But the part I'm most impressed by?" I leaned in. "That you thought I wouldn't see it coming." My mother swallowed hard. "I raised you better than this." "No," I said. "You raised me to survive. I made myself better than this." "You have no idea how hard it's been," Dylan snapped. "You think I just wanted your money? I wanted a moment, just one, where I wasn't second place. You got the grades, the scholarships, the startup. I stayed. Took care of Mom when her knees gave out. And still, she talked about you like you were the only one who mattered. Always playing catch up to you. Always living in your shadow." Dylan always rolled his eyes when Mom showed off my trophies. When I got accepted into Columbia, he didn't say congratulations. He just said, "You're the favorite now, but wait till you fall." I thought he was being dramatic. Now I wonder if he meant every word. And stealing $10 million was going to fix that? He didn't answer. The violinist's song shifted key. The air felt heavier. "You didn't just steal from me," I continued. "You tried to erase me, rewrite who I was to you." I stood. "And now, it's my turn." I gave a subtle nod toward the entrance. In walked Detective Silva, fresh off her flight. Dressed like any other Monaco tourist, and 2 local financial crimes officers in suits that looked more expensive than mine. They didn't raise their voices. They didn't need to. They walked over, introduced themselves quietly, and asked my mother and Dylan to come with them. My mother looked at me one last time, a mix of panic and something else. Recognition. Not of the daughter she once knew, but the woman she tried to outsmart and failed. I stepped outside as they were led into an unmarked vehicle. Clarice was waiting by the curb. Jaden stood nearby, phone in hand, tracking still live. "Is it done?" Clarice asked. I took a long breath. "No," I said. "It's just beginning." Because this wasn't just about catching them. It was about reclaiming the parts of myself they tried to rewrite. And as I looked out at the dark blue water of Monaco's harbor, I finally understood. The sweetest revenge was never about watching them fall. It was about reminding myself that I never had to become like them to win. The arrest made headlines, at least in the business world. Cybersecurity mogul outsmarts family in $10 million sting operation. Monaco counterfeit ring foiled by tech CEO's personal protocol. She built anti-theft systems for banks, then used it against her own blood. Everyone had an opinion, but no one had the full story. What they didn't know was that I spent 3 hours in a sterile interview room at the Monaco Financial Crimes Unit, just staring at the wall. The officers were kind, but firm. They asked for every detail, from the moment I made the withdrawal to the second I stepped into Lou Blanc's seal. I gave them everything, and when they left the room, I sat there in the silence and asked myself the question I hadn't dared say out loud until that moment. Do I want them in prison, or do I want to heal? Because the law would take its course. That part didn't need me. But the rest, the anger, the betrayal, the deep ache of being unwanted by the 2 people who should have protected me, that required a different kind of justice. Back in New York, I met with Priya and Clarice in my apartment. The mood was quiet. Not celebratory, just resolved. Priya laid out the options. "Your mother and Dylan are facing charges in France for possession of counterfeit currency, identity fraud, and interstate wire deception. Extradition is likely, especially since they attempted to register property under false names using fake cash." I nodded. "And if I testify?" I asked. She hesitated. "It strengthens the case. Could result in sentences of 5 to 10 years. But Camille, you don't have to." I looked down at the mug in my hands. The tea had gone cold. They were my family, I said, even after everything. And they chose to burn the bridge. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt, Clarice added gently. I looked at her. Then I want them to feel that. Not just legally, but personally. So I made my decision. I gave the authorities everything they needed, documents, receipts, signatures, but declined to testify in court. I also asked my lawyers not to press for restitution. They would never pay it back. And honestly, I didn't want their money. I never did. But I did want one last thing. A letter. I sat at my desk that night and wrote it in one sitting. It wasn't angry. It wasn't cruel. It was surgical. You didn't just steal from me. You stole from the person who would have given you everything if you'd just asked. You destroyed your own access to love, trust, and legacy. And you did it for a temporary thrill that will now define the rest of your lives. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to carry your weight into my future. I printed 2 copies. One was submitted to the court. The other was sent to their holding facility in France. I never asked if they read it, and I didn't care. 6 weeks later, the verdict was in. Dylan accepted a plea deal, 2 years in prison with potential parole in 10 months, based on full cooperation and admission of guilt. My mother refused the deal. She went to trial and was sentenced to 5 years without parole. 5 years isn't forever, but it's long enough to lose the illusion of control, long enough to sit with your choices. Meanwhile, I returned to the place I hadn't thought about in years. Toledo. The old neighborhood hadn't changed much. Still the same cracked sidewalks. Still the same smell of diesel and fried food. But the house, our house, was boarded up, faded, tired. I bought it back from the county with a cashier's check and a quiet nod. Then I tore it down, not out of spite, but because some things aren't meant to be preserved. They're meant to be transformed. 6 months later, the Foster Learning Center opened on that exact lot. We offer tech training, GED prep, and therapy scholarships for kids from broken homes. Every brick was intentional. Every inch, a declaration. I am not the product of what was taken from me. I am the architect of what comes next. I didn't post about it online. No ribbon-cutting ceremony. No press release. Just a small sign by the door. For those who were never meant to get out, yes, you still can. Jordan visited once. We stood in the courtyard at sunset, neither of us saying much. I'm proud of you, he finally whispered. I should have stayed. I gave him a small smile. Maybe you did. In the ways that mattered. He squeezed my hand. Still friends. Always. And that was enough. I share this story not for pity, but because somewhere, someone listening has trusted the wrong people and thinks it broke them. It didn't. You're still whole. Still capable. Still powerful. They don't get to rewrite you, unless you let them. So don't. Write yourself back. I still have the original note. The one my mother left beside the empty safe. It's tucked in the back of a leather notebook now, creased, faded, and stripped of all its power. I kept it not as a reminder of betrayal, but as proof of transformation. Because here's the truth. They didn't destroy me. They revealed me. They exposed the cracks I didn't know existed, the need for approval I never questioned, the blind spots I never addressed. And for that, strangely, I'm grateful. Most people think betrayal breaks you. But if you let it, betrayal builds you. It forces you to look closer, to reevaluate, to cut out the narratives that were never yours to begin with. You stop asking, why did they do this to me? And you start asking, why did I believe they wouldn't? And that shift? That's where power begins. For a while, I thought closure meant confrontation. That if I just said the right words, if I looked them in the eye long enough, they'd understand the damage. But real closure doesn't need to be mutual. It's a solo process. You build it brick by brick, moment by moment, until one day, you wake up. And they no longer get to be the loudest voice in your head. I still see Dylan sometimes. Not in person, but in the kids who walk through the doors of the Foster Learning Center. The ones who feel like the world forgot them. Like their only choices are loyalty or survival. I don't tell them my story. Not directly. But I show up. And sometimes, that's enough. So if you're listening to this right now, and your pain has a name, a face, a betrayal you never saw coming, I want you to hear me clearly. What they did says everything about them, and nothing about your worth. Let that sink in. You are not the lies they told. You are not the version of yourself they walked away from. You are not the fool for trusting. You are the brave one, for loving in the first place. People often ask me, would you do it differently if you could go back? And I always say no. Because the woman I am today, the one who built a new life, who protects her peace, who leads with grace and strength, only exists because of what I walked through. And I wouldn't trade her for anything. Before we end, I have one question for you. Have you ever trusted someone more than they deserved and paid the price for it? If so, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. Someone out there is looking for a reason to believe they're not the only one. And maybe, just maybe, your words will be that reason. If this story spoke to you, if you felt seen in any way, if you made it to the end and your heart's still beating a little faster, I hope you'll stick around. Like, subscribe. Join this little corner of the internet where stories don't have to be perfect to matter. Because here, we don't rewrite the past. We just reclaim what's always been ours. Our voice, our strength, our story. Until next time. Trust wisely, but never stop trusting completely.